Hello, my name is Ava. I'm a writer currently working on draft one of a story called Project Magnolia. It is a horror story about a haunted hotel, and I've been documenting the process of working on this project from the very beginning back in June up until my last writing vlog I released at the very beginning of September. So it has been a long time. I mean, it's only been a month and a half since I last filmed anything, but I do have updates for you. The most important thing to know is that we are almost at the end. I am not finishing filming this writing vlog until I finish this draft. I am committed to make it to the end. I have been struggling with this project the whole way through, although that's not true. The beginning was very smooth. I had a great time during the beginning, and then ever since August into September, and now in October, I've been struggling a lot more with this project. Not only have I been struggling with the project itself and just feeling like as the draft has gone along, it's turned messier and messier and messier and just keeps on like spiraling away from the beginning where I felt like I had such a concrete idea of what I wanted the story to be. And yet, as I just continue to write, it feels like I'm getting farther from that version of the story. And instead, I'm just falling deeper and deeper into this mess. Not only am I struggling with that, but I've also been struggling a lot with incorporating the act of writing into my daily routine. During the summer, in pretty much every writing vlog I published, I was talking about my job. I was talking about writing before I had to go to work, talking about how my job I had during the summer, which was a restaurant job, how much it was taking a toll on me and how much I was turning to writing as a sort of output for me to feel like I was still doing something with my time that wasn't related to my job. Now I am happy to say that I have quit that job, but funnily enough, I went 1 week of being unemployed and then I unexpectedly got asked for an interview at a job that I had applied to, and now today I'm going to my first shift at that job. Although, more importantly, at the start of September, I started up classes again. I am a university student, I am studying English literature and creative writing. So, as you might expect, I have been doing a lot of reading and writing for my classes. The month of September was pretty challenging for me in terms of just adjusting to my new classes. And although I was successful of achieving my goal of writing every single day during September, having a 30-day writing streak, I was not able to make a ton of progress in my draft. Although honestly, the fact that I still showed up for my project is an accomplishment in and of itself. Currently, the draft is at 58,000 total words. In previous writing vlogs, I have mentioned that my goal for this project was 70,000 total words, although every time I said that, I said, I don't know how long it's really going to be. That's just a sort of estimate. Now I'm thinking it's going to be in between 60,000 and 65,000 words, hence why I'm filming this writing vlog, and I really think that I'm going to be able to finish this thing in the next couple of days. My motivation to really finish this draft is because, as I believe I've mentioned in past writing vlogs, I just feel like I need to get this story done. I just feel like I reached a point with this project, or with this draft specifically, where I just need to let it exist. And then I think I need to take some time away from the project and then come back to the draft with fresh eyes and really evaluate what I want this story to be. Because I mean, and I talked about this in my very first writing vlog I did for this project. In my brainstorming writing vlog, I talked about the fact that this story idea has been in my mind since 2020, but along the several years that I've worked at it little by little, jotting down notes in my notes app, I've the project has gone through many different changes. It's started off as a dark academia story, and then somehow it evolved along the way into being a full-on horror story. But I think that with this draft, I have been struggling a little bit with narrowing down my focus. I feel like even though it's a pretty short draft and honestly not a ton of stuff happens in it, I feel like I'm still sort of falling into that feeling of trying to make it be too many things and not focusing enough on certain aspects of it. And I think that's what's really making me feel the way I do about the story right now, of just feeling like it's not right, feeling like it's not the story that I imagined it being in my head when I started the project. It's just sort of on the page, it's just turning into this jumbled mess of things that there's bits and pieces that I really like, but overall, as a cohesive novel and story, it's not what I think I want it to be. I think that's enough rambling for now. I don't think I'm going to be able to do any writing this morning, but hopefully I will see you later today. As you can tell, it is now much later. I have had a very long day today, but I'm happy to announce that after I did work my first ever shift at my new job, which was, as you would expect, very overwhelming, but also very exciting, I did manage to write 1,000 words, which is how much I did want to write today. The scene I'm writing right now, it is pretty intense, pretty action-packed. It's a hot mess. I was basically just writing complete nonsense. I'm going to sound like a broken record probably, but I'm really just focused on getting this draft to a point where I can say that it's finished, where I can type the end on the page and have it somewhat make sense. So with that, I'm proud of myself for today. I had a very big day and now I'm gonna get some rest and then I have classes tomorrow.
Opening, closing, both of these eyes. There's always a prophet, always a lie. A faraway poem, a fragment of light. Catching a ribbon, lost in the wind of my mind.
It is now much later in the day. It is 10:15 p.m. I woke up this morning, I went to my classes, I came home, and then I allowed myself to just relax for a lot of the afternoon, the evening, because I have had a very, very busy week. Honestly, I think this week has been probably the busiest one of the entire semester so far. So the fact that I'm even sitting here and actually starting to film a video, I'm very impressed by myself. I have been sitting here for the last, honestly, like the last hour and doing a little bit of writing and then getting distracted primarily by Pinterest. And I think I need to address something that I think I've sort of been in denial about myself. And it's something that I haven't really talked about in any videos yet because I've been trying so hard to just focus on this project and focus on the task of trying to write this first draft. And I've been trying to ignore the fact that there may be another project on my mind that might be the better project for me to be working on right now. When I decided in like about May of this year that I wanted to get back into writing and that I wanted to focus on actually starting a novel project, I was faced with pretty much three options. Option one was to go back and revisit the novel project that I worked on for 2020 up until 2022. That's the project that I've written 3 entire drafts for. Each one was basically a complete rewrite. That's also the project that I was working on in any of my old writing vlogs that are still up on my channel as of right now that are from 2021 and the beginning of 2022. And if any of you are still here from back when I was working on that project, thank you for sticking around because that feels like a lifetime ago, but also not a lifetime ago. That project is still very near and dear to my heart. I am always going to think of it as the first book that I ever wrote, but I ultimately decided to not go about revisiting that project because I felt like if I was going to revisit it, I did want to try working on something else before deciding to revisit it, which brings me to my second option, which was Project Magnolia. And in my very first writing vlog, I did talking about this project, my brainstorming vlog. I sort of explained my history with this project, primarily the fact that it has existed in my mind since about 2020, which is also, if you were following, when I started writing the other project that I was just talking about. So even back then, I sort of had to decide between the two options. I couldn't tell you why I didn't decide to start writing Project Magnolia, other than the fact that maybe it felt a little bit too intimidating for my first project. It started off as my version of a dark academia story, and then I honestly can't even tell you how it evolved into becoming something about a haunted hotel and becoming more of a ghost story and somehow becoming completely not a dark academia story, although I do know the answer to that. It was basically that I wanted to write it in a small town set in BC that logistically would never be big enough to have a school that would fit any sort of dark academia aesthetics. And that's why I think I ultimately decided to totally ditch the dark academia part, other than the fact that I was how old at the time? 14? Like I'm in university now and I still don't know anything about academics, and I have very little interest in writing a dark academia story because I do not think that I would do the academic part of it justice. And then we have the third project, which I really don't want to get into too many details because, if I do end up working on this in the future, I want to save giving a lot of the information for a video that's dedicated to the project. And, once I've even fully understood the project myself and have identified what it is that I want to share. Here's what I will say: the story idea came to me in spring of 2024. And then I kind of forgot about it. No, I didn't forget about it, but it was just like in the back of my mind. And at the time, I also wasn't writing consistently. So it did get to a point where I remember one night, it was like a school night. I was in high school still, and I sat down and I wrote like 1,000 words or something of just the two main characters having a conversation. And I remember for that one night feeling just so alive with writing again and with the story idea and these characters and writing dialogue, because as I've mentioned before, I love writing dialogue. I think it's probably one of my favorite parts of the writing process. And then I just sort of was forced to set it aside because I wasn't prioritizing writing in my life. I was prioritizing a lot of other things that were happening to me last year. But then, of course, as most story ideas do, I got another really big wave of inspiration for it last academic year, but this year, 2025, I know that there was one week in particular where I was like not doing my schoolwork and I was just fully sitting down at my desk and writing with pen to paper, trying to figure out the timeline of things. Because here's what I will say about the story: one, it is probably going to be the most romance heavy out of all of my current novel ideas that I have. The initial idea was a full on romance, and that's why it sort of emerged as like, I don't want to say a joke because I don't disvalue romance compared to other genres, but it's never been a genre that I felt like I could successfully do. But that's how the idea started. And then when I had sort of the second big, I shouldn't be talking, this is too much information, but when I had this sort of second really big surge of inspiration for this project, it began to evolve into something bigger than just being a romance. And it began to evolve into a story that is also probably the most like large scale out of all of my writing projects, primarily in terms of time and in terms of characters. I'm spilling, I'm not spilling too much, but I just don't know how much you care about this compared to what you're really here to listen to me talk about, which is Project Magnolia. But what I'm trying to say is that it's this big idea that I have. It's this big idea that I have that I decided not to go forward with because I did feel like I wanted to get Project Magnolia out of my system first. And I just assumed that I would be able to focus on Project Magnolia as I was drafting it, and that what's been happening to me, I guess, wouldn't be happening to me, which is, as I'm sure you can expect, me constantly thinking about that other project, arguably more than I've been thinking about Project Magnolia. Lately, in the past 2 weeks, I keep catching myself sitting in my classes and I'm sitting there And I catch myself and I realize, oh my goodness, I have not been paying attention for the last however many minutes, probably not that many minutes, but still, for the last minute, I have entirely been focused in my mind thinking about these characters and this other story. And it's not even the story that I'm writing right now. Even just today, I've probably added 5 new notes to the section on my notes app that is dedicated to this project. I just keep adding more and more little snippets of details that I want to include and ideas that I have. And it feels like everywhere I look, I'm getting new inspiration for this project. And I think it's getting to a point where I really need to finish this draft of Project Magnolia so that I can focus on this other project, because this other project, I feel like it's even more of a situation where I just need to get it out of my system. Like it is a book that is inside of me and that needs to get out onto the page. I feel like more than any of my other projects, when I think of this story, I can picture it on bookshelves. I can picture it with a cover and a title and pitching it to people. I definitely think that this other project that I have in the back of my mind has been affecting the way I've been feeling about Project Magnolia. I think maybe the fact that I feel like I should be more excited for the project that I'm actually writing instead of this project that I'm actively deciding not to work on. Like, I think that's just making me have a harder time sitting down and writing this book. My throat is literally beginning to hurt from how much talking I've done. So I think I'm going to stop here. I have about 600 more words that I want to write tonight to hit my daily goal of writing 1,000 words. So I think I'm going to turn this camera off, sit down, and get back to work on the scene I'm writing right now, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is a very intense scene. And I know I said yesterday that it was like a complete mess, but I actually read over what I wrote yesterday and I just did a couple tweaks to it. And honestly, I'm much more happier with how it's going now. So I am feeling better about the writing right now. I feel like it's not terrible, which is how I was sort of feeling yesterday. I'm going to sit down right now and I'm really going to focus on trying to progress the plot as much as we can so that we can get to the actual ending. So, with that, I will hopefully see you tomorrow. I want you to guess how many days it's been since I last updated you. If the answer was 4, you would be correct, which arguably, it's really not that bad. On the first day, I had work and then I got a pretty bad headache. I don't get headaches very often, but when I do, they do take me out of commission. And then the next day, I went to work again, and I don't think I really have an excuse. I honestly am trying to remember what I did. Then it was Monday. I went to classes. I had a terrible day. I thought I was going to sit down, do a ton of writing, do tons of filming, and then just woke up, went to my classes. I felt like just really weird the whole day, and like everything just kept on making the day feel like worse and worse and worse until ultimately at dinner time I spilled my soup all over myself and one of my favorite shirts. I know that's like over dramatic, but it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And then I was like, okay, I am not doing any writing today, or filming. Like, that's just not happening. And then yesterday I went to class again. I skipped one of my classes. And then I went to work. And the reason why I skipped my class was because I wanted to come home and do work for an in-class essay that I had to do today. And then yesterday I didn't do any work when I came home. I just sat here and was like, I need to be doing work or writing or filming or doing something. But then I just sat here. And then today I went to class. I did the in-class essay. It went well. I came home. I breathed a sigh of relief. And then now I'm here. And I've written about 500 words. As you can probably tell, I have been having a bit of a time this semester. Pretty much the events that I just described to you, of just having these plans and then just for various reasons never actually sticking to the plans that I make for myself. that has pretty much been this entire semester. I have plans to do a video that is sort of just more focused on the academic side of my life, doing like a week in the life of an English major sort of video, because I have a lot of feelings to say, not just about, oh, being a student, but also about what I'm studying and how I feel about my degree right now. But the bottom line is that trying to write this draft on top of everything that I've already sort of been going through this semester has been honestly like 10 times harder than I thought it would be. I didn't know what it was going to be like trying to work on this draft while also being in university because it was my first time trying that out. Like during first year last year, I wasn't writing at all. So I didn't have this massive personal project that I was working on. And I just think having all these other things going on in my life is just making all of my issues that I'm having with the writing itself and with the draft itself that much more amplified. My voice is feeling a little rusty again. Maybe I'm yelling too much into my camera. I think the point of my rant is just to emphasize the fact that I really, really want to get this draft done. And so my goal is to finish the draft tomorrow. And tonight I'm going to try to get as close as I can to the finish or to a point where I feel like I can easily finish the draft tomorrow, because if I don't finish the draft tomorrow, then I'm just going to re enter the cycle of feeling like I'm not accomplishing the things that I want to do because I've already pushed back this deadline so much. And it's not that I feel bad about myself for pushing back the deadline. Like, I know, okay, like ultimately in the long run, it's much better for me to push back an arbitrary deadline that I set myself. But I do feel like this draft is taking up space in my mind that I desperately need to, like, I need to get the draft out of there so that that little hole in my brain can be filled with, maybe I shouldn't say academics. You know what I'll say? My creative writing classes that I'm taking right now. Because have I been putting in my 100% effort into those assignments? No. No, I have not. And I'll get to this in a future video. But writing with the knowledge that you are going to get graded on it based off of a rubric is a terrible, terrible thing to have in your head when you are trying to sit down and come up with a story idea that is good in all of the ways that you want a story to be good for your creativity and your writing process. So, with that note, I'm going to sit down and write something that is not going to be graded. I have some much more positive news. I have now written 1,739 words today. I am feeling really good actually about the writing I did today. I set a 30-minute timer and I wrote pretty much for that entire time. Not I didn't write all of that in 30 minutes, but I had a really good 30-minute like writing sprint. I made good progress in terms of the plot and in terms of getting closer and closer to like the actual ending of everything, because obviously, if I wanted to, I could draw this out for a lot longer. Arguably, it probably should be drawn out a lot longer, and I am most definitely wrapping things up too quickly. And I shouldn't say that. Maybe not most definitely. I do think that this story in future forms is most definitely going to be longer than 60,000 to 65,000 words, which is what it's looking like right now is going to be the final word count. But I do like what I'm doing. I'm really freestyling a lot of this, like a lot of the stuff that I've been writing over the last 2 weeks, all of this big dramatic ending. This is the resolution of everything we've been building to. All of this stuff has been very much freestyled, very much me sitting down and writing just baloney onto the page and deciding to roll with it. And then today it worked in my favor because I really surprised myself by what I was writing. I started a new chapter, and because of what's happening in the story, I was writing with a very distinctly different voice from the rest of the draft so far, like still following the same character, but because of like things that are happening, it was the writing itself was very different. The sentence structure was very different. Everything was much more ambiguous, and it felt like the most stylized kind of writing that I've done this entire time, and also the most like weird, or the most like horror, because an issue I've been having with this draft is the fact that it's a horror story, sure there's ghosts, the hotel's haunted, but is that actually like doing a lot of the things typical of a horror story? Like, no. I don't think I I don't think that most people, if they read this draft, which I'm not letting anyone read this draft, I'll tell you that. But if anyone read this draft, I don't think that they would be scared. I mean, obviously that's also not the goal of horror. Like, the goal of horror is not always to scare people, or that's not the sole goal of horror. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm happy with what I wrote. I think I am going to stop now. I'm tempted to push myself to hit the 2K words today, but I think I'm going to stop here because it is getting pretty late and I do want to get up relatively early tomorrow, because in addition to completing this draft, I also have some other things that I want to do, mostly during the day tomorrow. So I don't know when I'll see you, but I'm going to see you tomorrow and we're going to finish this book.
Opening, closing, all in one day. Blue sky, then violent rain. Feeling the dirt shift, just sensing the change. The dog has been shaken outside of the grave.
Hello, hello. It is the evening. Today I had a very busy day doing lots of exciting stuff. Without saying too much about what I did today, I did come home with a little something something. I did buy a car today. I'm gonna be really honest, I feel like I haven't processed that fact because I have this other really big thing on my mind, being the fact that I really want to finish writing this book today and finish this video. But I was getting a little bit emotional today. I have been working a lot over the past few years, and a lot of the money that I have made has gone into my savings because I knew that I would reach a point where I was going to need to buy a car, pretty much. There's sort of a big elephant in the room that I need to address at some point in a video, but I really don't want to go on a whole rant about that new life change that is happening to my life in literally like a month from now. But I am going to talk about it in a future video. I think I'm going to do maybe a dedicated video once that thing is happening. You may be wondering, what the hell is she talking about? Something that involves a change in distance from where I may reside in relation to where I go to school and where I work and where I do everything I do that may make me need to purchase a car. Very exciting day today. Very big purchase, making me feel very, very big, very old, very grown, but also very accomplished. With the way that my writing session went yesterday, I don't know how many words it's gonna take for me to wrap things up and get to the very, very, very end. We're definitely nearing the end. I think I know what needs to happen. I'm gonna try to do it in 2,000 words or less, because that is pretty much the maximum that I think I can. Not that I think I can do tonight, but I I don't really want to sit here and write over 2,000 words right now, and I don't think that I need that many words to wrap things up. I think I just need to sit down and open the draft and think, how do I want the story to end? Even if the story as it exists right now is not how I want the future versions of the story to be, I can at least think about how I want to try and wrap this draft up in as concise of a manner as I can. Maybe not concise, but how I can best finish this version of the story and try my best to tie up the many, many loose ends that have come about from the process of me experimenting throughout this draft and testing out different story ideas. That has resulted in there being a lot of things that sort of happen and then don't really get resolved later on. But I'm going to sit down right now and I'm going to do my best to finish this thing. Okay, I finished the chapter I was writing, chapter 26, and that took me just under 1,000 words. And now I'm going to start chapter 27, which, let's cross our fingers and pray, is going to be the last chapter. I think I know exact maybe I shouldn't say exactly what needs to happen. Something needs to happen. I know like what the very, very, very end, like last few sentences is gonna sort of look like. So I can taste the end of this draft. It's on the tip of my tongue. It feels like I said, I think earlier, very anticlimactic, but I just want to get it done. I want to wake up tomorrow and just feel like the world is my oyster. I have a new car I can drive. I mean, I'm actually busy all day tomorrow. I have class and then I'm going to work immediately after, but it's okay. I'm going to be a changed woman tomorrow. I did it. I think I'm feeling pretty happy with the ending. It's by no means perfect, but it does kind of feel right for the story, and it feels like it does kind of connect a lot of the things that happened earlier on in the book or that I didn't do the greatest job of like weaving in throughout the entire story. It does a relatively good job, I would say, at doing what an ending is supposed to do and sort of taking everything back and tying everything together. If I wanted to, I would go back now and read over all the writing that I've done in the last few days and add in some additional stuff and really polish up the prose and everything and see if there were things I wanted to expand upon. But I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's going to be really beneficial for me in the future because I think any future work I do for this project is going to involve doing completely new rewrites of any scenes. So if there is, like sections where I want to add in more description of where we are, I don't think it's really that detrimental if I don't have that in my first draft, and that's something that I can explore in future drafts. Honestly, if we're being realistic here, probably like at least 50% of the scenes that are in this draft are not going to exist in any future drafts, or they're going to be heavily, heavily, heavily reworked. Let me give you what you probably really care about, which is my final word count of the entire draft. It's a pretty number, so that's also kind of why I don't want to go back and mess it up. It is 63,632 words, and my word count for today is 1,840. In total, this draft took me 115 days to write. I started it on July 1st, 2025, and I am now finishing it on October 23rd, 2025. So almost 4 months, I guess. I'm feeling really tired from the day I had. I'm feeling really tired from this writing session, but I am very proud of myself for not only what I accomplished today, but also what I have accomplished throughout this entire drafting process. I'm assuming that you've probably seen some of my other writing vlogs before. If you haven't, you can go check them out and see what writing this book was like for me. It's really been a roller coaster. I would say more of a roller coaster than any of the previous drafts that I worked on several years ago. This was my return to writing. It was my first time trying to draft a novel while also having sort of real person responsibilities, primarily the fact that I am both a university student now and that I have a job versus all the writing that I had done before I did when I was a younger teenager, when I pretty much had all the time in the world to write a book. And I also went through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions regarding just in general how I felt about the project and how I felt about my writing. Near the beginning, I felt pretty confident in my story, pretty confident, honestly, with my prose. I was pretty damn proud of a lot of the chapters that I was writing and the direction and the amount of momentum that I felt like the story had in the beginning, and the way that I really felt like I was taking the story idea that I had in my head and translating it onto the page. And then I'd say approximately around the halfway mark of the draft, I began to not only lose a lot of that momentum that I had built from writing very consistently for a large chunk of time, I also began to feel very different about the story itself and just felt like I was losing that sense of direction. I was really just stumbling through the middle and feeling like I didn't know what I was doing anymore, and I didn't know what direction I wanted to take the story in, and certain new ideas were coming to my head that I felt were better than what I had before. And ultimately the draft that I ended up completing is a pretty incoherent mess, but I think that I have learned so much from writing this draft. I think that writing this draft was the necessary step for my writing journey. I think that deciding to write this first draft of this story that I've had in my mind since 2020 was the best idea for my writing. I think I needed to write this draft and let myself have it be messy and bad and too short to remind myself that I am capable of writing, that I am capable of writing a draft, and that the only way to arrive at a piece of writing that you're proud of is through drafting, is through revision, is through practice. You have to write stuff that's bad. You have to let yourself be okay with writing stuff that's bad. And then you have to work on the skill of taking your terrible writing and then progressively, little by little, making it better and better, piece by piece. And I think that's probably the greatest piece of information that I've learned from the creative writing classes that I have taken at university is the importance of revision. And there's something that one of my professors said last year that has really stuck with me. And she essentially said that she thinks that a great writer, a lot of the time, is really just someone who has perfected the art of revision. And she said herself that one of the ways that she has been able to arrive at a completed piece of writing that she feels genuinely proud of is because she went through so much revision to the point where she was able to take this finished version of the story that she knew that she was capable of getting to, and then just kept working and working and working away until she felt like she arrived at that version that she knew she had inside of her. I'm sure you're going to continue to hear me talk about this project and talk about this draft and talk about what I've learned from writing it and where I plan to go with this project in the future. I hope that what I'm doing here can just sort of give you an insight into what my writing life looks like and the struggles I'm going through, and maybe you can relate to some of it, because I know that in the last few months, the fact that I've now started consuming so much more writing content now that I'm creating writing content again, being able to see the fact that other people are going through similar things that I'm going through has been really helpful to make me feel like I'm not alone in what I'm doing. So I'm gonna end the writing vlog here. I'm gonna go get myself a bowl of ice cream, and I really hope that you'll stick around and see where my writing journey goes from here, because honestly, right now, I don't know what the next step is. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. I just realized that I forgot to dramatically type the end onto my document, so we're gonna do that now. Bye!